Good morning, world. Welcome to another episode of Xendependently Minded. If you are a new or returning listener, I truly hope you enjoy this episode. Before we get into the episode, here's a brief disclaimer. Enjoy. The views and opinions expressed by past, present, and future guests of Xendependently Minded have not been expressed by me, and they may not even be shared by me. The views and opinions that I express are, of course, satirical. If you're confused, then try this thought experiment to help you understand. If you like what I said, or say, and you agree, then you can tell yourself that it is my real opinion, and it's not satirical. If you don't agree with what I say, and you're disgusted and repulsed by it, then obviously I'm just being satirical. Obviously, these aren't my real opinions, because this is clearly a character, and nobody would actually have these opinions, would they? Anyway, enjoy the episode. How's it going, boys and girls? It's your boy. Homeless and jobless, has-been hack, industry plant, Stephen Colbert here, starting my brand new podcast. Forget about the one that I started during the pandemic with a couple other late night hosts that nobody watched. My show, unfortunately, has been canceled. You know it. You didn't watch it. You don't love it. You hate it. The late night show with Stephen Colbert has been canceled. You may know me from some of my low lights, some of my lowest, most dishonest, and intellectually rotting skits, like during the pandemic, the Vax Scene skit that I did where I danced around and just promoted the vaccine. Not because I received over $800 million in pharmaceutical funding from Pfizer and other companies just in 2024 alone. Not that my network, my parent company, gets funding from Pfizer or anything. That had nothing to do with the skit. It was hilarious. I'm also known for perpetuating and continuing to push the Russiagate hoax, calling Donald Trump Vladimir Putin's cock holster. Great stuff like that. I brought a lot to the table. I have a lot of value. My show has value. To echo my good friend Joy Reid, former MSNBC racial grifter, my show had value. And unfortunately, it was canceled because I was costing the network $40 million every year. I'm almost as negatively profitable as the WNBA. WNBA, which costs $50 million every single year for the NBA, has never turned a profit. Even with Caitlin Clark's phenomenal performances, we still don't pull in money. And it was the same for my show. So maybe I'll join the WNBA and I'll tank their ratings even more. Because in today's day and age, I can go play a female sport and I can beat people's asses. I'd probably get beat up though by those big lesbians. You ever seen them? They constantly body checking, shoulder checking Caitlin Clark and beating her up because she has a boyfriend and she's the only non-lesbian in the WNBA and she's actually good. Anyway, I'm really sad, so I apologize if I'm low effort this episode, because Stephen Colbert was my favorite late night show host, and I'm going to miss the fact that I never watched a single episode of his piece of trash show. Probably contributed more to the downfall of the late night talk show format more than anybody. It used to be kind of a staple of just the regular family-friendly comedy scene in America. There used to be a million shows. There still are a few, but nobody watches them anymore because they're all owned by biased, dishonest networks. They stopped becoming funny in 2016 when Trump was elected because all they did was lecture. They didn't just make jokes about the president, because making jokes about the president should be allowed in a democracy. I've seen funny skits about all presidents, Trump included, but they just stopped being funny and they just became like a show where people lectured. And the worst is Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel would get on every single night during Trump's presidency and cry about something. He'd cry about something and then he'd relate it back to his kid. Somehow it was Trump's fault. He's just a real sick person. He's a sick individual, and he needs to be next. He needs to be canceled next. Jimmy Fallon probably is trying to get himself fired. Jimmy Fallon I actually like. I think he's funny. I've always liked him. I've never minded him. Every time he did the political hack biased trash. When it comes from Jimmy Kimmel and it comes from Stephen Colbert, you can feel that there's venom and hatred in their heart for people who dared to vote other than establishment Democrat. They didn't just attack Trump, they attacked RFK Jr. and they repeated a bunch of lies and slandered his character all the time. Enough so that I truly feel that, a lot of people have speculated that because Colbert said something about Trump recently, and then Trump kind of like, I think he sued CBS and he won. And people are speculating, and it's because of something that Colbert had said, something that he had slandered him with. I don't remember what it was, but anyway, Jimmy Fallon needs to be freed from this prison that he's in because he's actually talented, and I think he's a funny guy. Jimmy Kimmel, I also used to like him when I was a kid, and I had, he was less political, and he was just a funny guy. But my favorite late night host will always be Conan. Conan O'Brien was the guy that I watched the most of. I used to actually record his sets, his shows. His monologues were great. He's just a funny guy. And he's doing his own thing now, so it's much better. It's much better than having to be, restrained by a network. But anyway, I know it's been a while. I believe it's been a month now, maybe a little over a month since we last talked. A lot has happened. Last time we spoke, the biggest piece of news that I talked about was, I believe, the United States had just struck the United States. Yeah, the United States used their B2 or B whatever. There's been so much going on. My brain is hazy. But I think the last time we talked, the United States had just bombed Iran's nuclear facilities, and there was a bit of an escalation for a while there. There were some attacks, some strikes, some missiles that were launched at Israel. I do believe a few people died in this latest in that escalation. But what ended up happening was a ceasefire was pretty much announced. I want to say it was 12 days in, and now the fighting has stopped, at least for the meantime. In the meantime, it was strange when the United States attacked those 3 nuclear sites. I was, obviously, nobody in the world thinks that Iran probably should have a nuclear weapon. Whether that's for us to decide is what a nuclear weapon is defined as, because the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, stated that they had lots of uranium, but they were not pursuing weapons. A lot of people said, well, do you blame them? They need it as a deterrent. They need kind of like a really basic one where they could just drop it. It's not like a hypersonic missile or anything like that. It's just a really weak nuclear weapon, and they need it to kind of dissuade people from picking on them further. And at the time, I didn't really see why they did this, but I wasn't freaking out. I wasn't super outraged because I'm not in the military. I'm not a leader in the military. Never was a general. I never spent a second in the military, let alone as the head of CENTCOM or AFRICOM or NORCOM or whatever. I trust the military. I don't think that they're necessarily, completely benevolent, but I trust them at doing what they do best, which is running the military. And this was kept under wraps, and they did it very secretly, and it was very impressive how the execution, and it really just instilled more confidence that I have in the military because of how quickly we were able to do it. How they kept it as secretive as possible, and the only reason I kind of thought that this was going to happen was because there were reports that B2s were being sent from like a few different locations to the Middle East, and I was like, well, they're not doing that for fun. They're going to do something with them. And luckily, I don't think there were any casualties in these strikes on these nuclear facilities. And Iran had just been, for a few days after, they just kept posting on social media, America's going to pay. Israel's going to pay. America's going to pay. Israel's going to pay. And they kind of, they did unleash some barrages of missiles on Tel Aviv, and some people got hurt. I think some people got killed, and there's a lot of structural damage done. And and then the ceasefire came. Israel and Iran did strike each other a couple times, I guess technically violating the ceasefire, but they're not currently at war. So I'm hoping that they continue to pursue and get involved in negotiations with the United States, because you don't need to negotiate with Israel. Israel doesn't have the power. The United States does. We're the ones who carried out the B-2 strikes, not Israel. So ultimately, I think the negotiating is currently ongoing. Steve Witkoff is probably involved. He's negotiating currently the ends to 3 conflicts: Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, and Israel, Iran. So, Iran did end up, it was a funny thing. Iran ended up doing this kind of symbolic retaliation on the United States, where they did this thing where I think they attacked like bases in Qatar, military bases, U.S. military bases in Qatar, but they warned us ahead of time. So they're like, hey, I can't not retaliate because it's going to make me look like a bad leader. So I'm going to attack. But we're going to do it on this date and this time. So get your soldiers out of the way, because we're not going to actually try to kill American soldiers, because we don't want to get wiped off the face of the earth. So here's the date and time. We're going to attack. They did it. And then Trump immediately let the world know. He was like, thank you, Iran, for giving us the heads up. We understand it had to be a symbolic attack, but thanks for letting us know ahead of time. Nobody got hurt. Anyway, I'm hoping now the next step is a normalized relations between Iran and the rest of the world. But I don't think this could happen with the current leader, Khamenei. I think that he needs to get removed by the people of Iran, I'm hoping. There are some figures that I read that possibly up to 97% of Iranians don't like him. They don't like the regime. They've wanted him out forever. They've wanted the Ayatollah out of power since they first got into power in the 70s. And we're really hoping, the world is kind of hoping, that there's kind of like a revolution. But the problem with revolutions, whether it comes from the inside or the outside. So I would never advocate for regime change, because any time there's been regime change in the Middle East, it's been worse off. Look at Syria. Apparently, Israel and Syria were fighting for some reason. I don't know. I thought Syria was good. The new leader is getting money from the European Union, and he's met with Trump. Oh, wait. That guy also used to be a part of Al-Qaeda. Strange. So, apparently, getting rid of Bashar al-Assad in Syria has not made Syria a peaceful place. There's genocides happening on different groups of Muslim and Christian minorities there. So that didn't work out. That's the latest regime change we've seen. Lots of different people have talked about how we've wanted regime change in Iran forever. Israel's wanted that regime to be toppled. Everyone talks about that list of 7 countries that Israel and the United States had talked about kind of toppling, and all six of 7 have been toppled. I don't remember which ones I think it was like Iraq, Afghanistan, Sudan for some reason. Might have been Somalia. I don't remember. You got to look up this list. But 6 of the 7 countries have been toppled, and the last biggest threat to Israel, mainly, because none of these countries threaten the United States in any way. The only time they threaten us is if we try to invade them. Never ends up working, because we don't know the terrain as good as they do, and it's hard to chase rats that dig into the ground, like these terrorists do. Anyway, I'm hoping that, the world can normalize relations with Iran. If it has to be done with the current leader, I'm fine with that. There's a lot of things that have to be figured out here. Iran is going to continue to pursue nuclear capabilities, whether it's just energy for its people or it's a covert weapon. But you can bet your butt that if they get closer to a nuclear weapon again, the world is going to know. The United States and Israel have the best intelligence in the entire planet. They have agents in Iran right now. I guarantee you, if there's 100 scientists at each of these 3 main nuclear sites, 10 of them are agents for the Mossad or the CIA. And they're never going to get a nuclear weapon. It's never going to happen. Ever. We haven't even used the max capability we have with those bombers. they have to go to another planet if they want to make a nuke at this point, and we'll probably still find a way to blow that up too. So I'm hoping that relations get normalized. Iran has a lot of people. I want to say their population is 90 million people. And I pride myself in knowing that better than Ted Cruz, a guy who was a presidential candidate and one of the most powerful senators in all of the United States. But anyway, screw that guy. He's always sucked. He can blow me as far as I'm concerned. Ted Cruz, you suck. Yeah, Iran has a massive population, and they bring in less money per year. They have a lower GDP than the total revenue for Walmart. So there is one corporation in the United States that could start its own country, and it would have a higher GDP than the country of Iran with 90 million people. And I'm hoping that the people of Iran can be free, can normalize trade. They can start to travel abroad, send their students abroad, open their minds. They have engineers, designers, architects, scientists. They have value. They're human beings on this earth. They deserve the ability to, show off their creativity and, their abilities to create things and innovate like the rest of the world. So here's to normal relations between Iran and the rest of the world. So next thing I wanted to talk about, there's been an increase, in the past 20 years since the multiple Middle Eastern wars the United States started or were involved in. There's been an increase of car incidents with specific car manufacturers, and we still haven't addressed it, still haven't looked into it. The people of these countries, some of the most passive, nicest, friendliest people, are starting to climb on mosques, spray paint them the word remigration, putting up flags. This happened in Denmark, of all places. Danish people are like the friendliest people in the world, and they're out here spray painting mosques, putting themselves in danger because we know how these certain employees from these car manufacturers react when you insult their religion and you insult their people. They tend to use knives. They like to cut first and ask questions later. There's been a lot of terrorist attacks by one specific group. Like I said, in the last 20 years, but there's been a significant amount in the countries that have taken the most amount of these immigrants from the Middle East. One of them being Germany, the place that I currently live in. Every single week, there's a story coming out of the UK, coming out of Sweden, coming out of Germany or France. A story about a fellow from the Middle East committing a sex crime or a violent act against people. And they always yell this certain catchphrase, Aloha snack bar, before they do it. In Germany, there was there were multiple Syrian and other Middle Eastern people that were constantly assaulting girls at school, at a pool. They were sexually assaulting and groping and touching German girls at a school. 4 of them were arrested and will probably get let go because there's judges like that piece of trash woman judge who let I want to say it was an Afghanistan man off after I think it was actually a few people. There were a few different Middle Eastern and or African immigrants that were gang raping a girl for hours in Germany. And they got let off by this German judge for some reason. And then all she really said when she kind of, to give her a little explanation for her decision was she just didn't want to normalize, Islamophobia or whatever. Great. Absolutely amazing. Karma will be enacted on these people. They're not going to survive much longer if they show their faces in Germany. I guarantee you that. That's the point. That's the point that Germans are at. That's why the AfD has risen in popularity. Not saying they're the answer. Not saying they're great. Just saying, when you have people who are the only political parties that are talking about this issue, there's going to be more eyes and ears paying attention to them. There was also, some axe and hammer attacks by some Syrians. So Unfortunately, the problem with this is, here's what the German government does. I know this for a fact because I work with Germans and they tell me this is how it works. You have these people committing crimes. You have the night of 1,000 rapes in Cologne. If you don't know that story, look it up. There was literally a night when there were over 1,000 credible instances of rape in the city of Cologne, all perpetrated by the same group of people that I've just been talking about. Nothing happened to those people. There are instances like this happening every single week across Europe, especially in Germany. And when the public gets outraged, when brothers, fathers, sons, and husbands hear about this, and they get rightfully angry and desperate, here's how the German government reacts. The people go, why are there immigrants that are allowed to get their lifestyles funded by the German government, by the German taxpayer? They're specifically told they're not allowed to work, so they have to become a burden on the tax system. This is all factual. This is how it works in Germany. Then they go out, they commit crimes, they assault women, they traffic women, they beat women, they stab people on trains. You have kids getting assaulted at school by the kids of these undesirables. And people are mad about it. The German people go, hello, government, why are you allowing these immigrants to commit these crimes? Why are you bringing in all these immigrants? Why are you bringing immigrants? You keep shipping them in. We have a housing crisis. People can't afford to buy houses. They can't afford to buy cars. It's getting too expensive. Inflation is bad. And your solution is to take my 37% of taxes I'm paying and giving it to these people who are committing crimes, and then you're not punishing them. And the German government's response is, what do you mean, immigrants? There are no immigrants. That person's a German because we just gave them citizenship. So you have a group of criminals who come. They don't contribute to German society in any way, shape, or form. They don't pay taxes. They actually live off, they're leeches, they're parasites off of these taxes. They can't work. They never are forced to learn the language. So they come here speaking Arabic. They can't speak German. They don't open a business because the only money they have they get from the taxpayers to live. They have affordable housing all over this country. I passed by this specific apartment complex that is specifically, it seems like it's a refugee apartment complex. Every single time I pass it, I get mad because Germany is a clean first world country. But when you go down this street, it looks like Kabul, Afghanistan. There are pieces of furniture thrown out the window. There's trash everywhere. There's broken down cars. There's little bags. It's like a sea of trash. You can't even see the ground. This is on a lawn of grass, and you can't see a hair. You can't see a single blade of grass because it's just filled with trash. I pass by the street every time I go home from work, and I just see piles and piles of broken furniture, rusted metal, rusting cars, a bunch of kids running around barefoot. There's 10 kids to one apartment, and there's just trash everywhere. And they're given German papers. They're literally being given citizenship. They're a plague. These people who come, that commit crimes, that sex traffic, like the Islamic extremist mafia in the UK, which is being investigated at the highest levels of the government right now. And if the UK knows what's good for them, they'll adopt some type of RICO Act and they'll shut these bitches down and they'll kick them out. Because no group of people anywhere deserves this, let alone the great history, the great nations of the United Kingdom. These people are a plague. They litter, they don't follow laws, they don't learn the language, they don't work, they're leeches. And Germany will respond accordingly. I have a few German coworkers who told me, they're regular social democrats, they're social liberals, they're not conservative in any way, but they have daughters. And many of them have just come out and said, no political party can save us. The AfD won't save us, but I'm letting you know now that we will elect the German Trump very soon if this issue does not get addressed. And I like that idea. I think Germany needs a Trump. If Trump could get elected as president for 4 years in Germany, I think he could make some positive change, because immediately the full power of the United States military and ICE would come over here and start kicking all these fools out. And then that street that I pass by every day home from work will be clean, and the grass will be able to grow and see some sunlight, rather than being suffocated under the weight of a cockroach-filled couch and a bunch of trash bags. Next thing I wanted to talk about, so there's apparently been a quote-unquote, the biggest air quotes you've ever seen in your life, measles outbreak in the United States. There's been one death attributed to measles, and there have been a couple cases of measles, and a lot of idiots are blaming RFK Jr.'s vaccine safety initiatives and his exposure of corruption for this measles outbreak, which there's been one death. So, if you haven't paid attention to anything, here's what RFK Jr. has done since he got into office. He revamped the vaccine safety initiatives that the United States has, or the lack thereof. He's more money, more research, more studying and development has been going into vaccines. He's not anti-vax. He hasn't gotten rid of anti-vax. He's simply fired a bunch of people who are responsible for the vaccine schedule, fired a bunch of corrupt FDA employees who used to work for these vaccine companies, definitely getting kickback by looking the other way and approving vaccines for emergency authorization, emergency use, whatever. And he's just been very transparent about the dangers of some of these pharmaceutical products that up until the COVID pandemic, nobody in the world would defend Big Pharma. Everyone hated him. Democrat, Republican, they all hated him. They hate the Sackler family. They hate Purdue Pharma. They hate all these companies that have been responsible for creating some of the most addicting and destructive substances known to man. They're so much worse than illegal drugs. So much worse for you because they are legal, they're prescribed, and there's a kickback that a lot of these doctors will get for putting you on these drugs that are really hard to kick. And if some of them, if you kick them too fast, you die. So you physically cannot get off of these drugs. These are the worst humans on this entire planet. They're worse than war profiteers, in my opinion. Way worse. Because they're benevolent. People see the doctor with the white lab coat, the nerdy guy with glasses, and they trust him. Oh, sure, I'll vaccinate my child with 13 aluminum-based vaccines before they're a week old. And then I'm going to wonder why they start acting strange and why there's no light behind their eyes, and they're allergic to every single food that the wife happened to eat while she was breastfeeding the baby, because I got a 16 aluminum-based vaccines before he turned 1 month old. I mean, it's sick. These people are sick. These are sick people, and karma's going to knock on their door soon. So idiots are blaming RFK Jr. for why there's been a measles outbreak in the United States instead of the possible 20 million illegals that are most likely not vaccinated because they're coming from the jungles of South and Central America. They're coming up through Texas and California illegally. They're being harbored. Fugitives are being harbored under the floorboards of Los Angeles and other sanctuary cities. But that has nothing to do with the measles outbreak. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. We blame RFK Jr. He's not trying to make our lives better. He's not trying to he's not trying to put his foot down on the throats of Big Pharma. He's not trying to, go after possibly the most powerful group in the entire United States. We're one of 2 countries in the entire world that allows pharmaceutical advertising on television. And RFK Jr. is not trying to do that for the betterment of society. He's not trying to make us healthier because our life expectancy is going down and more than half the United States has 3 or more comorbidities. None of that has to do with, none of that is positive. It's just causing a measles outbreak. 1 in every 3 kids has measles and they're all dying with bumps and pustules and all that stuff. No, there's been 1 death, and this measles outbreak most likely, I can say this in full confidence, it has something to do with the 20 million illegals that are currently in the United States. It might be less than 20 million because there have been some deportations, and we've stopped that wide open faucet. The faucet wasn't leaking. It was turned on to the max water pressure possible. That's what it was like under the Biden administration, because they were attempting to remap districts in swing states. They were shipping migrants to swing states and then smearing anybody who talked about voter ID, so that way these illegals could vote and they could permanently switch these swing states to Democratic states, and there will never be an election ever again after that. It will be Democrat until the end of time. So that's that. Last thing I wanted to talk about was the Epstein files. So it's been very obvious that there is a current cover-up going on by the current Department of Justice. I've said it before, I will say it again. Donald Trump has not been implicated in these files, not in any meaningful way, not in the way that people who, hate him think. Donald Trump is not into children. I can say that pretty confidently. There are a lot of people who know him, have known him for decades. They say he's never been into children. He's into young, hot women, but he's not into kids. And again, use your logic here. If Donald Trump was in videos having sex with trafficked children, if he was implicated in any way, Biden, who had access, the Biden Department of Justice had access to these files. The same Department of Justice that made Donald Trump a fake felon so that people can constantly refer to him as a felon despite the crimes that he committed, the small little, financial loopholes that he took, never being felonies in the history of the world until Biden's Department of Justice made him a felon. None of those people who had their hands on the Epstein files exposed him to cause him to, instantly lose the election and get Kamala Harris as president. What I'm trying to say is, in a non-retarded way, is if Donald Trump was implicated in any way in these files as being someone who is taking part in the illegal sex trafficking and crimes committed against underage girls with Epstein, they would have released it already. The Democratic Party and the Biden administration would have released it, and that would have put the nail in the coffin, and Donald Trump would not have been elected. 100%. There are a lot of people in the MAGA movement that are very loyal to Trump that draw the line here. And the Epstein thing has really started to fracture the Republican constituents, the Republican voters. A lot of them are really upset because they're like, hey, not only did you say we'll get to the bottom of this, the people that you appointed in your cabinet also made careers off of criticizing the saying Epstein did not kill himself. These files are on my desk. I'm going to release them. That woman needs to shut her mouth. Pam Bondi needs to go. I'm tired of hearing her talk. Here's the case. It's one of two scenarios. Either the Department of Justice never had the files, or the truth that would be exposed by all of these files if they were all leaked, which I don't think they should all be released at the same time. Some of the people involved in these are currently going through lawsuits. There are current cases that would cause, jury bias. If you released all the files and then these people were prosecuted, this is such a huge story. Good luck finding jury members that don't already pay attention to the Epstein story if all the files were to be released. And there's also the argument that's been made that it's so bad and it would expose and cause so many of the world's most powerful people to go to prison that the world would collapse. I don't think that's the case, but that's an argument that's been made. So it's either the truth is it would be so damning to our intelligence apparatuses and some of our allies' intelligence apparatuses that we can't release them. It would cause governments to collapse, or the Department of Justice just never had these files. I think they have them. The Biden administration had them. I do believe that they have files, surveillance footage. They have a lot of stuff. They're currently working on it. I trust that what we need to see will come out eventually. It's just been really unfortunate that Trump has come out and he started to kind of go on the offensive on people who have been demanding, rightfully so, answers. And, he's gone the route of, this is a fake story. The Democrats created this fake story. Epstein was a creep. Don't know why everyone cares about him. Because he had two big islands, and lots of powerful people used to visit there. and they would do some really terrible things to trafficked young underage girls. So that's why, Mr. President, we want to know what happened here. We want to see those files that were promised to us by multiple people in your cabinet, including yourself. So I hope we get what we need to get from here so we can, kind of put this behind us. Prosecute these people, ruin their lives. I have seen this interesting theory that I have had seen zero evidence for, but I have seen some people say, I think that Donald Trump is actually using the Epstein files to blackmail, the establishment, the powers that be, to get him to do what he wants. And I'm not sure if I like that. I don't know if I don't believe that at all. It's a funny kind of like 5D chess, Mr. President, 5D chess. It's one of those kind of movements where someone does something that's so stupid, politically, strategically, it just hurts them politically. And then people go, well, actually, he's playing 5D chess. Him coming out and insulting half of his voter base for wanting to know what's up with the Epstein files, that's actually 5D chess. Actually, the midterms coming up don't matter. It totally doesn't matter that he's fracturing the Republican Party and the Democrats are going to see some massive wins if they don't change soon. That's actually 5D chess. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. I do want to mention the heartbreaking flood that's happened in Texas. We're still feeling the aftermath right now. There are groups of search and rescue parties. There's been a lot of deaths, a lot of people missing that are definitely going to, if they're ever found, be declared dead. It's really unfortunate. A lot of young girls died that were camping, out doing outdoor stuff that just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's really unfortunate. I'm going to link a couple GoFundMes that I can find that will help, the families that have been affected by this. And my heart, love, and prayers go out to everyone who's been affected. That's going to do it for this episode of Xendependently Minded. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying hydrated. And do I have a recommendation? Oh, Superman. Superman was good. I liked Superman. I watched the new one. It's pretty good. There are some things that I didn't love about it, but I still enjoyed it. The main actor, David Cornsweet, plays a good Superman. I liked that, this was like kind of a double-edged sword. So on one hand, I liked that Superman was back to being, truth, justice in the American way. He has a moral compass. He doesn't go around killing people. He actually will interrupt fights to save people. He does it a lot in this movie. It's back to the guy who believes that, there's value to human life and I'm going to preserve it. I have a moral compass. It's kind of been a little bit of an overcorrection from the Zack Snyder, Henry Cavill Superman, who, by the way, I think Henry Cavill is the greatest or the second greatest Superman of all time. And unfortunately, he never got to be in a good movie. There was never a single good project that Henry Cavill Superman was a part of, but he really, really looked the part. Unfortunately, his Superman had a lack of regard for human life. There were scenes when he was throwing cars and buses and clearly killing people. They were human casualties as a result of Henry Cavill's Superman. And that's not real. That's not the real Superman. I'm sorry. The real Superman values humanity. He's supposed to be the perfect American. And Henry Cavill Superman was like I said, looked the part. He had aura. That scene when he's arrested in Batman vs. Superman, and he's like, I could kill everybody in this room right now. These handcuffs are a joke. I could chew on them right now, and it wouldn't do anything to me. But unfortunately, he was never in a good movie. Man of Steel sucked. Batman vs. Superman sucked. Both versions of the Justice League sucked. And it's unfortunate because Henry Cavill really looked the part. But the new Superman was good. Don't listen to the idiots in the access media who are trying to make it political. It's not a political movie at all. There's no politics really involved besides maybe like a metaphor for Russia-Ukraine. Maybe a little bit of Israel-Palestine. It's a fun movie. Kids will like it. And, the humor was not bad at all. A lot of people were like, James Gunn, he's annoying. He tried Guardians of the Galaxy humor here, and it just ruins the movie. It's really not bad at all. It's really not overbearing, and it was a fun movie. I really liked it. I think you guys will like it too. So that's my recommendation. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for the support. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks for sharing the episode. And check out our merch shop. Get yourself some nice Xendependently Minded merch. Support the show. And support the Child Mind Institute, because 100% of the proceeds get donated to the Child Mind Institute, which is a nonprofit organization aimed at helping families that have children that suffer from mental illness. So, that being said, thanks for watching. Catch you on the next episode. As always, stay safe and stay away from those crazies out there. Thank you.